But then what happened is she is now the respondent. Right. He's not the respondent. So he doesn't have to respond to all the negative things and lies that she may say. Right. And that's why I advocate first getting down there, filing first, because when you file, you're not the respondent at this point. So you don't have to now go back and backtrack and then first deal with a whole litany of things that you've been lied against. Right. So now she has to respond to, well, this man was in this child's life from day one. He did this, this, and this with the child. And then all of a sudden the child was taken from this man's life. You have some explaining to do.
So now you're becoming more proactive.
Now you're proactive. Now you're in the position. Now the court is, and it's, look, in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, it was, if it's the mother, the child goes with the mother. It was an unquestionable thing, right? Unquestioned thing. But now the courts are looking at this differently. Now, especially in California, the thing is, what's in the best interest of the child? What's in the best interest of that child is not to have a mother, just sort of randomly going around Skid Row and keeping them from a good father, right? That's not in the child's best interest. So it could be that in the best interest of the child, it's to be primarily with the father or with the father and his family. So I would suggest that.
I have several friends that's what has happened. But that's a good point. I have a friend that has a young man, his son, is in college and he's playing ball and has the potential that he could be drafted, and he just recently had a baby. And that's the exact information I gave him. Tell him to go make sure that he is the father. File the papers. Find a lawyer, because if he does get drafted, then it's going to be a whole nother counterball game, setting up trust for his baby. And he has the child with him. They split it right now. Amenably. But that's going to change. And it's always going to change if you're not married to that individual and another woman gets involved. It's going to go helter-skelter at that point. Just because the other body is there. So if you protect yourself, and that's what I told him, make sure right now before he signs anywhere on a dotted line, push that off until you get this part here taken.
You have to. I mean, look, he has to know if it's his child first, and if it's his child, he has rights. You know what I'm saying? Rights and responsibility, right? But he has rights. I think,
I might even have his father come to your circle.
Bring him on. Bring him here.
We need them all.
Bring him on. One of the things it was mentioned in the course of this conversation about the fear that men have, right? And it's a real fear. It's a fear born, from interaction with the police, since the police was established out of slavery, right? So it's not a fear that I say, hey, why are you paranoid, right?
No, we got
so that fear is real, but there's a changing tide, right? And if a father can go in, I initially went into court, and at a certain point, I didn't even have an attorney, right? I just stopped bringing, because it was so much money, right? But the court saw that I had a certain determination, right? And one of the things I tell fathers, look, when you go in, you're going to have this wellspring of emotion. Right? There's going to be a lot of feelings. But if you go into court with those emotions, speaking the way you do, right? And especially if you are the respondent, and the mother says that the father's angry, right? And you're going to say, I just want my child, right? Of course, I'm going to say, oh, he is an angry, crazy man.
Right? Exactly.
So, there's a certain way you have to approach the court, right? And there's a certain way, but even before you get there, fathers, should know that there's a process. So there's a mediation before you go. So if it is not a bad situation, right, you can establish what you're going to do for the child, and then the court would just sort of sign off on that. The judge only becomes involved if there is no agreement, right? So everyone is sent to mediation first, right? Now, some situations, in my situation, my mother's child wouldn't even go into mediation with me, right? She was establishing this narrative that I was this big, mean guy, right? So part of that, to sustain that, she didn't appear in mediation. But normally, both people in mediation, if they can work that out, when they go in front of the judge says, oh, okay, so you've worked this out. Here you go. So it is different stages to this process. And if they once they do it, they find that it's not as scary as it really is.
I like the fact that you're bringing that piece to it, because we can work with our children.
Sure.
But they got problems once they leave you. right?
Right.
And when they go back home, they go back into a situation,
Right.
and it's mom and dad, but then these people over here are telling you this is how I'm supposed to act.
Sure.
But then mom and dad are yelling and screaming at me, or screaming, period. So how do I act? I know I've been involved with kids and working with children for a long time, and when I did my ski program, the kids were with us usually from Thursday or from Friday after school until Sunday when we brought them back. Rarely, we had some parents that would go with us, but I have several parents, and some of my kids were single families. Some of them had two parents. More likely, they had one parent as opposed to two parents. But I do have some parents that have told me that when their kid hit that 13 marker, because that's a real important age for kids, and that when they were having problems at home, they were saying, we wouldn't have made it if my kids didn't know that they had you and that you were open enough to speak to them and talk to them. And the girls usually rode with me in my truck, and so they would be having conversations and I would be listening. And so when I felt necessary that I needed to have my little input, and they didn't see me as a parent because I didn't have kids, I was just an older sister. Right.
And you know, it's funny you say that, because most of the time a parent could tell the kid something, and then someone that they look up to can tell them the same thing, and they'll go with that before they'll go with their parent, because they think the parent is just there to nag them and you know, get them in trouble.
Do parent things.
Do parent
things.
But it seemed that when we are telling these boys that, you know, this is what you need to do, this is what you should do, they take it better.
They do.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're that village, right? You're the extended family. So the parents I would get Mother's Day cards from most of the mothers. They were like, oh no, you've been just as much involved in their growing up. And my kids now, they are all the kids that were in my program, and I had like 49. They all went to college. They are all parents. They are all having their children now. Sorry, tells me how my age is, but but I had a major impact on their growing up, and I'm very proud of them as if they were my own. And I never had kids, so whenever somebody said you didn't have kids, I said I got 49 kids out there somewhere. And that's just the kids that I work with there. Then the kids that are within the entrepreneurial programs that I do. But I do know being that person on the outside and be willing to get involved so that they at least have an ear that they can have conversations with to help see them through the challenges that they have to go through.
That's in the African tradition, right?
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about village and you talk about, you know, each one being responsible for the other, in some way we're all responsible for each other's children, right?
Yes.
If it's not directly doing an organization like Manhood Camp, it's how you present yourself in front of a child, right? So if you are out there cutting the fool, right, and your child is looking at you like, man, that dude's he look cool though, don't he? Yelling like that, but he dressed nice though. So maybe that's how I should act or something.
Right, exactly.
So we all have a responsibility, but I think Travon said something that was really important, is that at a certain point, you know, they do, when you say something, they do listen to you more. And it is a critical age, right? When you get to that 12, 13, when they start to rebel naturally, and the first rebellion occurs in the home, right? Against the parental figure that's closest to them. Then, you know, guys like us, when they come to us, you know, they say, you know, we'll say, hey, man, you know what, you should, you know, you look like you got some potential in school, man. You better hit them books, right? Oh, man, yeah, that's right. I should definitely do that, right? And then if the parent is close by, the parent is probably pulling their hair out. I told this little something. But the truth is that even if a parent was standing there and the message is getting to the child, hey, if it gets to the child that way, then that's fine.
And that's what parents have to recognize, that sometimes you need an outside person to be able to get the point across.
I remember when my grandfather used to tell me a story, and my dad, and he said he used to get in trouble down the street. And he got about 2 or 3 whoopings
on the way home.
He got home.
Yeah, that's how it works.
And then he got a whooping when he got home. So, you know, but a lot nowadays, and I don't know where this comes from, but nowadays a lot of parents is like, I don't want you to say nothing to my son. I don't want you to say nothing to my daughter. And I don't want you to even try to think about touching them. Because I remember when I was in, and I don't put my age out there, but when I was in elementary. Well, you look good for your age, you know?
You look young.
So, when I was in elementary, I did something wrong, and I got swatted with a paddle in school, you know, and the teacher used to watch your hand, and they took that all away.
We don't do any of that now. I don't know what I have no children, so but I don't know what these girls are. They're not parenting.
Well,
my girlfriend's 9-year-old daughter told her I didn't want to eat that, and she turned around and made another meal.
Yeah, insane.
I said, what are you doing?
But
I don't want to go with you today. She wanted to go to the gym, and her daughter said, I don't want to go to the gym. So she stayed home from the gym.
Right.
She's 9 years old. How can she tell you? I said, pack her up and take her to she has no choice but to go.
Yeah, you going where I go.
I don't know what we're doing now.
But I think
legally she has to do it. So
yeah, legally you have to do whatever you
if there's no other adult in the home, I think legally she has to do it. But
she was going to leave her at home. I said, you leave her at home, something happens.
Yeah, right. Then now you're in trouble.
Right.
And I think some of that is because they took when they taught a child to call 911 when they were being paddled, they kind of took your power away.
Right.
And so parents that are really not quite into parenting anyway.
Sure.
There's too much. It's too hard work.
Sure.
Yeah, that's an easy out, right? I was like, they told me I can't hear.
Because my mother be like, call 911. I'm dialing for you.
I think my uncle told my cousin.
They on their way already.
My uncle told my cousin she threatened to call 911. He said, well, I hope you get to the phone before I get to you. Because when they get here, they're going to have a reason.
They put fear in
us. Or as my sister always told my nephew, well, this is how it's going to work. You could call 911. And they can come and they're going to take you out the house, not me. And then if they did take me to jail, because they're going to take you and me, but my husband's going to come bail me out and I'm going to come back home.
Right.
But you in the meantime are going to be somewhere else. And I did the accounting for a psychologist. And he did anger management classes, and when the county would come in and take the kids out, so this one kid didn't want to do his homework, so he lied to his teacher and said that his father was abusing him and mean and hard and all that kind of stuff, and was always yelling and hollering at him. So they called Children's Services, which is what the teachers are supposed to do, and they came, took the kid out, put him in a group home.
Right.
And then the dad had to pay to go to anger management, so he was our client, right? And so the kid thinking, okay, well, now I can go back home. And they're like, no, you can't go home until he finishes his course.
Sure.
And then the courts now decide whether or not you can come back.
Sure.
And so that he was counseling both of them.
Wow.
And so by the time he saw that this was a bad decision on his part and backfired, he was like, I want to go home. You can't. You created it. You started the ball to roll because you didn't want to do your homework, and then you didn't want to listen to your parents and obey your parent. That's your job as a child, is to obey your parent.
Right.
So you
that's
created
the only job you have as a kid.
Right.
It's
and so you created this whole thing, and now you're in a group home with some other kids that had some other...
Probably scared you to death because they got real issues in there.
Yeah, they got real issues.
It's... my mother is visiting, and she's staying with us for a while, right? And it's she definitely has a certain way that she parents, right? Her and she got that from her parents, right? Her parents taught her a child should be seen and not heard, right? And so she taught me and my brother and my other brother that to a degree, and then she lessened, right? And so I think as we look at like parenting today, right, we have to say, okay, what was good about our parenting experience and what was not so productive, right? And we have to allow for not that truth has changed, because truth is truth. A child should not be disrespectful to their parent. A child should have, should be taught chores because that teaches responsibility. So those things are truth, right? But is it truth that what we learned of everything that we were taught, will that help to propel us, our children, into the future, right? Because there's a certain developmental stages that a child goes through, right? And so a parent has to be able to hit those markers and teach the child properly during those markers. And part of it is about giving freedom, right? And so the child wanted to stay home, right? So of course that freedom can't be allowed because that's against the law, right? But give the child, okay, look, you can't stay home, right? But I'm going here. So you can bring this or you can bring this with you, right? Absolutely. So you giving the child still the experience of learning that they can have, they can still have choice, but they can't just walk off a cliff with that, right? And some parents, they are so dogmatic in their approach, like it's what I say, what I do. And what happens is they create this thing where the child will listen to them for a certain time in fear, but when they hit that 12 or 13 mark and they get a little bit more meat on them, especially kids.
And especially a boy and his mother.
Right,
because when he gets bigger than she is, then now what are you using to keep them in place?
The last time I got a whooping, my mother, I said something. I think I was 18 or 19. She went and got a broom.
That's what happened to me.
I said, Mama, look. I said, you know what? I just can't do this, Mama. I can't let you sit up here and beat me with no broom.
Sit now.
She said, boy, this is my house. I said, but I respect that, right?
Oh,
and I'm going to stop doing what you asked me to stop doing.
Now.
But I cannot let you beat me with this broom. And I think and that's a reaction, beatings and whippings, right? Was something.
How old were you?
I think it was 18 to 19. I mean, I was dating.
Well, let me ask you a question.
I didn't tell my girlfriend, hey, look, I can't beat her at this very moment. I got to get beat by this broom. Can we reschedule this date?
So you think at 18 years old is when you can actually say enough is enough, Mom? I mean, I love you, but
I think
respectfully.
I think respectfully, yes.
Be out the house.
Exactly. Yeah, because how do you tell your girlfriend, wow, my mom just beat me with a broom?
So what happened? Well,
I have to ask you guys a question. I can't.
Blood.
We're over at 5. Right?
At 5, yeah.
I gotta ask you guys a question because my friend Deborah is going to kill me if I don't. She's an advocate for drug trafficking. Young girl. She has a nonprofit. She does a whole lot in the community. You have something about ending child sex trafficking on your site,
right?
On
Right.
your website. What is that about?
Well, one of the things that we met in an organization called what is that organization again? That you still work at, man. I can't think of the name. Hathaway, right? So when we were with Hathaway, we work with children, and 3 of the young ladies that I work with became involved in sex trafficking, and so I got involved with actually rescuing 2 of them.
Yeah, that's what she does.
And so as we got further into developing Manhood Camp, we actually did a couple of presentations at Audubon and another school, educating youth around that subject matter. And so it's such I'm a father of three girls, and so that's it's not just girls who get abducted into that as well.
Yeah.
But and it's a $300 billion industry, and so and it's frightening when you think about the avenues and think of how much kids are on the internet, right? And a lot of that occurs there. So it's really just to create awareness around it. We have a site up there of someone organization that deals with rescuing youth. So we have that there. But so that's something that because I went through that experience with these girls. And here's the thing. Here's a crazy thing, right? These girls were the youngest one was 12. She had just turned 12, right? And so when we went to about 3 months before, we were talking. She was talking about baby dolls and stuff, right? And so when we found her, they had her all dialed up. I mean, she was in scantily dressed, everything except her face. That was not made up. There was no makeup on her face. So she looked 12. Right, and she was recruited, right, because she ran away. She went down to the DCFS office downtown, and they have recruiters around there, and she was recruited, right. At first it was just come hang out, but then it was like, okay, you're going to walk the street, and it was so sad when we went over there and we found her. She looked at me and she said, Mr. Mark, I'm not that little girl anymore.
Goodness gracious.
And I looked in her eyes and I realized she was not that little girl anymore.
Don't totally destroyed a child's life.
Absolutely.
And that's interesting. Yeah, because that's big right now. There was a little girl this morning. I think it was on the news before I left. She had been communicated. These guys, one from Florida, one from San Francisco, and one from Seattle, and they came here to hook up with her, and they had been communicating with her on like 4 or 5 different chat rooms, places. Something called Kit. I don't even know that one exists, in Snapchat and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So they've arrested him. So we definitely have to, first of all, parents need to know what your children are doing.
Exactly.
My nephew is 21 years old, and my sister will go knock on the door. What are you doing? You're not talking to Al Qaeda in there, are you? Like, open up the door. I need to see what you're doing in there.
Right.
But parents cannot be. This is a very dangerous world we live in. And parents cannot be hands off. You gotta be all up. Like my mother was all up in my business, and you have to be to protect them.
I agree with that.
And it's happening with young boys too.
Oh yeah,
it's happening with young
in
a slightly different way.
Right.
I hear, but it's happening with these kids. These kids that are feeling like they're missing something emotionally, and they're looking for.
Well, they're
listen.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
So if a man came up to them, and because they don't have their father, and they're looking for that male role model, right?
Sure.
And he
Get
has
him involved with the basketball games, the football games,
right? And he has the wrong idea.
Yeah.
He's easily can just take because you're needy.
Sure.
And I think I don't want to really bring this subject up, but I think these young girls are getting caught up into the R. Kelly thing. These new allegations that's coming up. It's just ridiculous.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
that's the self-esteem.
Well, look, you talk about how they're recruited, right? There's different types, right? There's like they call them the gorilla pimp, right? Easy to just say, hey, you're going to come do this, right? And then there's the Romeo pimp, right?
Yeah.
And that guy's like, hey, you know what? Man, what's going on? You look kind of sad, And, you ain't got no fly gear. Why don't you come on over here? Let me talk to you for a minute. And then about a week of that, the person is so enamored by that person, right? And then they say, hey, you know what? I just need you to do me a favor. It's nothing big. I got some guys upstairs. I just need you to go up there and take care of them real quick. You do that for me, right? And then they do it. Reluctantly, they do it. If they don't do it, they will force them to do it, right? And then the threats come. And when they want to try to leave, look, I know where you live. It's real subtle. The gangs are heavily into that. So get involved with your child. If they have Snapchat, if they have Instagram, then you have that as well. Right? If you want a phone that I pay for, I am going to be your friend, right? And then if I find out that you have another profile, you lose that phone.
Right.
I know even with my niece and my son, like I'd be like, I pay for those phones. Let me see that phone.
Right.
And I go through everything.
Sure.
You have to.
Even when they sleep, they don't even know it. I just take their phone and I go through everything. They can't change their password or anything.
But I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, making your relationship with your kids to the point where they feel comfortable with communicating with you about everything, expressing what's on their mind, and having that conversation, which we don't have with our children.
And I think I referred, and I think you may have spoken to Greg Winston.
Yes.
So his is about that conversation with the parent and the child, because I think a lot of times a parent needs to know how do we have this conversation, right? So we need to be, and if it needs to be with other people, what have you been doing? But that was my mom's thing was, you can come to me, and she started it when I was like 7 or 8 or 9, just before puberty. Come to me and talk to me about, I don't care what it is. If you're a teenager and you get pregnant, come to me. And talk, and that kind of happened when I was like 17, 18. I was like, okay, you, man, got to come talk to my mother. And we got to sit down and have this conversation.
Crystal, you know what?
So we can make a decision.
What you're saying is so important, and I think that's, we talk about different styles of parenting, right? From when our parents parented us, versus how we should parent now. When children are exposed to so much, right? You thinking that, I'm not going to have the sex talk with my child before a certain age, right? They are already having that talk in some iteration, right? And so the people ask, when is a good time to talk about sex with your child? One, they probably already had that conversation, but definitely when they ask you. And you have to be able, and sometimes this is not easy as a parent, you have to be open to what they bring you.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to be open to, and you can't shame them.
Right.
You can't make them feel bad. You can't make them feel guilty for having these type of because they're having these experiences. And if you do, I guarantee you what's going to happen is they're not going to come back, Trey. You're right. They're going to go find someone else they're going to talk to. And if they get too hurt, they get too down, they may find themselves in that presence of that Romeo guy that we talked about, right? So in order to, you can't completely just guarantee that it won't happen.
Right.
But Crystal, as you said, like your mother did, right? You have to be open for the conversation. Yeah. Look, I'm a father of a daughter, right? My daughter comes in and tells me that she's, at 12 or 13, hey, Dad, I was thinking about, having sex. Now, I would be like, let's talk about about it.
Right.
You know? I'm going to try my best.
You said something that's so true, and we got to be open to listen and be ready to receive whatever they tell you, because sometimes they may say the predator might be in the house.
Right.
I don't know if you know Wendy Glandy's story. Her story is amazing. It was her own father who ended up prostituting her out.
You guys want to meet with her because
she's amazing.
She has an organization for young girls that have been abused, sexually abused, and then she has a conference as well where she brings all the bodies to the table.
Absolutely.
But her story
is absolutely amazing.
Wow.
For years she was telling her mother, wouldn't hear. Then she ended up fleeing to her grandmother's house. Grandmother said, "Well, baby, you ain't on the street." The grandmother ignored it. Everybody ignored it.
And that happens a lot.
But then her and her father ended up doing ministry together. Amazing story. So she has a nonprofit about forgiveness. And it's
I would love to.
Amazing.
So I'll make the reference to that, and also Greg, because his book, Barbed Wire Souls, is the same subject matter. And because it's all about the village, right?
It is.
And so Dawn is a fitness trainer, and she's worked with American Diabetes Association. She's an ambassador for young kids with feeling self-esteem and eating right and so forth.
Absolutely.
Work with her.
Love to work with you.
And,
absolutely, Don.
And then I have
we're a fan, just like that guy, Don.
Y'all gonna be calling in next time.
Gonna be calling in. Hey, Don.
We don't know what y'all talking about.
I don't know what y'all talking about. I just want to say, hey, what's up, Don?
Funny.
And I'm doing it this summer, so some of your kids might be I do this every year with the Urban League. It's a youth biz camp. And we take the kids through a 3-week program, and it's July. This is for our audience as well. So from June, the first session is June 13th to the 29th. The kids will be in an all-day camp, and they will learn how to be entrepreneurs. They will create a business, and then they will pitch their business, and then there's a monetary reward. Again, they're invested $750 into their business. And then our second session is July 9th to the 26th, and it's from Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is an application process, so you want to get your application in. We have 25 kids per session. The age is between 12 and 18, but if there is a child that you have that already have a business and they're in that 9 to 10-year-olds, we will actually take that into consideration. If they, if they got
something to add to that event.
Yeah, so this event, so if you're interested, reach out to me at cmitchell544@gmail.com, and I'll send you over the application and the flyer. You will find it on our all our social media platforms. It's an amazing event. We've extended it. Actually, I'm one of the certified teachers, and we've extended it to a 3-week camp. It was a 10-day camp, and the kids absolutely
loved it. So
got
a business, give them more, huh?
right? And they got a business plan completed in 10 days.
How many of the teachers you have there?
So we're certified NIFTY teachers, but we are looking for, you have to be NIFTY certified to teach, but we're looking for volunteers, coaches, mentors.
I'm just asking how many teachers you have?
2.
2? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we are, so you guys can come out and have, and we can put you on the schedule. You can talk to the kids.
Sure.
So that would be a great conversation.
We would love to.
And then if you have any kids that you know in your program that want to be an entrepreneur.
We actually did the little T-shirt thing about the Youth Life Matters, and they wanted to do that, and they was like, all right, well, we're not going to spend all the money. We'll just go eat, and then we'll invest more into our business.
Sure. Right. So if you have any of them, we'd love to have you. And then if you guys want to look at us doing something, we can find some funding. We can actually put that program in your program, where we can develop them. Because that's the other thing. You make our children feel confident and successful, then all that other chatter and stuff kind of dissipates.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So we're at the top of our hour. So there was something you wanted to.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome.
I had a great time.
Any parting?
No, hey, look, this is wonderful. Crystal, I congratulate you on this. This is so important. People need to know what's happening out there. They need to be connected to organizations and businesses that can help them. So kudos to you.
And also the owner of the studio, she is actually her goal. She's actually going to teach children how to be podcasters and how to create revenue from that podcast.
That is wonderful.
So we're going to introduce you to Felicia because she's going to start her academy. So that's what eventually the idea is for them to run the studio for her. And she's been in the business for over 30 years.
Cool.
So wow, we're at 5 o'clock. It's been fantastic. You've been a great co-host.
Thank you so much.
You guys have been great guests.
Thank you for inviting us.
And
love
so
the energy.
What's the event on the 20th?
Oh, the event coming up on the 28th is Fatherhood Circle. Once again, it'll be at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall Community Center. It's on the first floor. That's off of Martin Luther King Boulevard. It's from 11 to 1.
Okay, and
you can find me at Dawn DAWN Strozier STROZIER on all social media.
Hey Don.
Hey Don. And this weekend I'm speaking at the Black Writers on Tour in Carson at the Carson Community Center. We have a convention all day from 9 o'clock in the morning to I think 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Writers and potential writers and want to be writers coming out to find out how you do that and to celebrate. And there's a business expo. So again, we're supporting Black Business Month this month. So come out and support some of our Black writers out there, buy their books and anything else. Oh, and remember the BCIF fund. They're having their fundraiser, which is the Black Community Investment Fund. They have funds available to young businesses or small startup businesses in our community, and we are investing in our own. So that's on April 27th. If you want to know more about that, go to their website, which is www.bcif.org to find out the date and the time and where they're having it. And we're going to say goodbye, and we will see you next Friday. Gilbert will be back. We have 2 more amazing guests next week, and we'll see you then. The Business Zone. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
As a small biz pro, I saw we roll, using procurement, program, and control. As a small biz pro, I saw we grow, using procurement, program, and control. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Got my capability statement, yes, I'm ready to go. Got my balance sheet, my P&L, my statement of cash flow. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur.